We have John Macaroon on, and man, oh man, it's my favorite day of the week. John Macaroon joins us, publisher All Lions, and of course the host of the Detroit Sports Podcast. John, we can hear you, and welcome to the show, my man. How you doing?
Oh, that's great. Real fast, I'm real impressed that Premier Pet Supply has so many locations in Metro Detroit. Always important to take care of your pussy cat.
Damn. Look at John right off the bat, dude, at 8:33 a.m. I love it. John, can I ask you, Dan kind of talked about it yesterday, but Bruce Irvin, the addition, can you speak more on that? And because we talked about it, and it was a cool graphic that Danny Bennett put out that, last season he had a pressure every 8 snaps. In this season, the second leading guy on the Lions who has the most pressures, John Kaminsky, has a pressure every 9 snaps. So basically, Bruce Irvin last year was a little more productive than any other player besides Aiden. But could you speak on the addition a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Check out All Lions. I just dropped about 20 minutes ago my feature interview that I did with him, one of the first media members to talk to him one-on-one. And man, I was getting Ndamukong Suh vibes from him right away. Real welcoming, a veteran that was just working out, really kind of thought maybe his time in the NFL had come to a close, but kept in shape. You guys said it. Dan Campbell said he's got superhuman genes. He's in good shape, but needs to get back into football shape. But he just talked to me about having that alpha dog mentality, that attitude of like, I'm not going to help out my opponent. If my opponent's on the ground, I'm just going to walk away. And he talked to me about his love of sacking the quarterback. He just told his wife last week, he said, man, baby, I can't find a high that is just as good as sacking the quarterback. He loves playing NFL football, and I think something that he told me that maybe is lacking with the Detroit Lions is that rugged, nasty attitude along that defensive line, that hunger, that just overwhelming drive to bring that quarterback down. Now, obviously, he's 36 years old, so I think his value is going to be more in that locker room, talking to these young cats about sacking the quarterback, life experiences, how to handle your business on and off the field. I think he brings with him a rugged attitude that I think this defensive line needs, because they're letting quarterbacks eat far too much. So while, yes, I do think that when his opportunity comes, he will have a little bit of impact, but I think that if he can take the likes of a James Houston under his wing, the likes of a Josh Paschal, and kind of get them producing at a higher level, that'll bode well for the Lions defense. Because you guys see it, defensive line needs to get their ass in gear and get going.
Ooh, John, you made me more excited about Bruce Irvin than I initially was. I mean, honestly, and that's why we love interviewing you. One of the many reasons. But let's talk about the offensive side of the ball, because I think personally that this offense had its best performance maybe I've ever seen by a Lions offense in my lifetime. So moving forward to come towards playoff time, and even right now, can this Lions offense be the best offense in the entire NFL?
Absolutely. And here's something to get more excited about. The Lions have been producing at a high level offensively without Jamison Williams. Imagine him 2 months from now, first round of the playoffs, knowing a little bit more of the offense, a little bit more confidence. I think that this offense gives a lot of people a lot of reason to be confident. One, it starts with Jared Goff, who, look, you even have a situation in which there's a little bit of chaos, and he checks into an audible, and it ends up being a 75-yard touchdown. It just indicates that Jared Goff and the relationship with Ben Johnson has really started to be fruitful. Now you get your offensive line healthy. You got a 1-2 combination with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. That's only going to get better. So I'm very excited about the potential of this offense, especially now against the Bears. I think the Lions could potentially do it again. And you saw with Jonah Jackson returning, the past couple games that he's been involved in, the Lions have scored over 35 points. I'm hoping that his wrist-ankle situation doesn't linger and doesn't cause him to miss any time, because I loved that offensive line. Jahmyr Gibbs told me, we got the best offensive line, and the numbers bear it out.
Yeah, and that's no doubt about it. I mean, look at the run game, and I asked you this last week, and we didn't expect what we saw on Sunday. I mean, this run game is terrific, John. Not just the run game, but the duo now with Jameer playing at a level everyone thought he would play at when he was drafted. You got D-Mont back looking great coming off that rib injury. But your thoughts on the duo, David Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs? We said it. We think they're the best backfield duo in the entire NFL. Could you talk more about them now that they're both coming into their own officially, and what problems the Bears are going to have to face here with that backfield?
Yeah, it is interesting. The Bears feature, I think, the number 2 ranked rush defense, so they do have opportunities to they've limited their opponents in terms of rushing, but I think the Detroit Lions, when you look at it, they can play a lot of different ways. Okay, if you want to take away the run, you want to load the box, then Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to kill you. So, look, the Lions, they've said the vision of what that running back duo would look like came to fruition against the Chargers. You saw David Montgomery break one. He's that classic A running back that you give the ball to 20, 25 times. But at the same time, the evolution and the improvement of Jameer Gibbs has also been stellar to see. He's gaining confidence. And you realize, too, that Montgomery and Gibbs get along quite well. Obviously, after Gibbs had that great run against the Chargers, was able to cap it off with that touchdown. So you look at it and you say, these two work off of each other great. And we all have talked about it. It's just like Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. And when you build an offensive line that is awesome and productive as what the Lions have, now you can win in the playoffs. That's how you win. If you can impose your will, this is the secret recipe, is to wear down your opponent, and you got the 1-2 punch that can really allow Jared Goff to handle his business. And David Montgomery is going to come into this game really, I think, looking to show his old team, hey, you let go of a real alpha. And Jameer Gibbs, I think, is gaining that confidence where he likes tasting the end zone and he likes getting the rock a little bit more. So this is perfect. As long as they stay healthy, the Lions offense featuring those two running backs going to be formidable.
Oh man, that all just sounds so fantastic. But while we're on the high of the Lions, I of course have to change this conversation to this. Is there anything about the Chicago Bears that you think could give the Lions any trouble this Sunday?
Yeah, look, I understand it's obviously the Lions are overwhelming favorite. I love the trash talk now between Amon-Ra St. Brown and his brother. If you go check out their podcast, they recently dropped it on the 33rd team. It was amazing. Equanimous is like, you guys are still the Lions. You ain't shit. And Amon-Ra's like, okay, man, that was great to hear the back and forth. I think the Lions are going to drop a hammer on the Chicago Bears. It's a division game. Dan Campbell has talked about the game really, in essence, meaning like it's 2 games. And this football team, you can see their motivation. They understand that if they win the division, the home playoff games really give them an opportunity to advance deep in the playoffs. They want to play in front of the crazy fans at Ford Field. It's a loud environment, almost deafening. You want to be able to have as many home games as possible. And the only way you do that is to win division games. They know, too. I think also what's going to keep the Lions motivated is the fact that the Vikings have started to win some games. So this Bears team is just another team in the way of the Detroit Lions meeting their goals. But with the Bears, they have a good rush defense. Obviously, Montez Sweat has been pressuring the quarterback. I do think that it would have been a more interesting game had their backup still been in the contest. But with Justin Fields, I think that the Lions now are going to want to seek to stop his ability to move the football via the ground. And I think if you can keep him contained, he is a shitty pass. He's a shitty pocket passer, and I think you can get to him. This is a get-right game for the defense.
Hell yeah, John. And one other thing that we haven't really touched on yet, you talked about J-Mo not really getting going in this offense yet as an extra layer, but what about Donovan Peoples-Jones? Do you think we, as Lions fans, will see his debut, and if so, do you think he'll actually get some legitimate volume, or do you think he'll just kind of get a couple 10, 12 snaps out there?
Yeah, look, obviously full participant on Wednesday. I think he'll make his debut. But I just think that early on, you got to look at it and you say, there's a lot of mouths to feed. You got to feed Sam Laporta. You got to feed Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got to feed the 2 running backs. I think where DPJ comes in is he's another deep threat option. He's another guy that can take a pass at 3rd down. I think early on, you're going to see him be targeted, but I don't think his productivity numbers will come and show until he's more acclimated later on in the year. But it's a good sign, man, to start against the Bears. DPJ brings a lot of interesting skill sets that I think Jared Goff, if they can build that chemistry quickly, I think the combination with him and Jamison Williams should allow kind of just open up the passing game just a little bit, because you can only dink and dunk your way so often against good defenses. You got to have that deep threat. Even if you just lob it up there and you throw it 15 yards past DPJ, it does give defenses just a little bit more pause as to what you're doing. But I think that DPJ signing low-key could be something that really helps the Lions moving forward, just to help out the offense be a little bit more disguised.
And, John, I think Dan Campbell should get a lot more credit for how well he does at assembling a staff. And I think he's done a great job of that. Even with the Anthony Lynn stuff, he moved on from that pretty quickly. And we talked a little bit about Ben Johnson earlier, because he will be the most coveted head coaching candidate for a lot of teams. What's your level of concern, or if any, for a guy like Ben? Because I believe, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but it should be Tanner Engstrand next if Ben were to leave. But assuming that Ben takes him with him, your worry level for a guy like Ben Johnson and how much he's meant to this team if you were to leave or depart this offseason, or do you think there's a chance he'll be here for the next couple of years to maybe chase a Super Bowl with the Lions?
I'm not worried at all, and here's why. Like you said it to start the question, the head of the table is Dan Campbell, and that's the offensive genius that has also worked in that room. You got to give him credit, the aggressiveness. Obviously, Dan Campbell has his handprints all over this offense. Yes, Ben Johnson deserves a lot of credit. He's a wizard play caller, definitely can scheme wide receivers open, definitely one of the brightest offensive minds in the NFL. He's going to be a future head coach, and a name that potentially a team that could also target him if they don't have success is the Bengals. You look at it, there's a handful of teams that are going to drop their coach, but there's also a handful of teams that are at that level where they don't take the next step. They also could move on, like the Cowboys, like the Bengals. Don't just assign Ben Johnson to the shitty teams. He could also be coveted by teams that say, you know what, we need that last piece to take that step from a postseason team to a Super Bowl team. So I do think he's going to move on. Maybe he'll even take Tanner with him, but I'm not worried at all. I think Dan Campbell can rebound quickly, target even maybe a Scotty Montgomery on that staff, or look to a young college assistant that obviously is a bright offensive mind. Dan Campbell is an offensive mind himself, and he understands offense and football, having learned from some top coaches. So I would not be concerned at all. This offense will keep rolling, and obviously the key thing is the marriage between Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. They're bringing in talent all over the place, and I think that the talent's going to keep coming to Detroit at a very high rate all the way through their tenure. So I think that this is a good sign. A sign of a good team is when the other franchises want to poach your coaches.
Yeah, well said, John. And last question for you. Some updates on some guys that maybe we've seen a little bit, but they're not being talked about a lot. A guy like Broderick Martin or Jack Campbell. Could you give us an update on kind of their development? I think Jack being the most important one, but even Broderick, we saw him out there against the Raiders. But just an update on those two and how they're progressing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And here's kind of how the Lions treat it. They want to throw a bunch of things at their players, even though they're going to make mistakes. Broderick Martin, very raw. But you start to see a little bit of what he can bring to the table. A large individual, athletic, but it still at times needs to work on his fundamentals and can get bullied a little bit. Jack Campbell obviously is going through his rookie season and having at times some struggles reading. And I think here's what the Lions are trying to do. They're trying to teach him multiple different spots along the defense, even seeing him rush. But at the same time, you're going to have to live with some of the growing pains. But having said that, the opportunities that the Lions are afforded is that his development will happen quickly. Jack Campbell is still a young player, but he's still going through some of those things that he's seeing for the first time. These offenses are operating at an elite level. Things that he's seeing in terms of disguises, eye candy as they call it, pre-snap motions, they can get really complicated. And so this has been all valuable. All the mistakes have been obviously things that he's going to learn from. I think he's having an okay rookie season. I don't think it's to what many maybe would have expected early on, but going into next season, the experience that those two will have had will definitely pay dividends. And I think Jack Campbell is a guy with the right mindset to eventually be the leader of that defense. But this year, it's all about, hey, you're thrown into the fire, deal with it and learn from it. And hey, despite all the issues that he's having. The Lions are 7-2. It's a great problem to have, and I think Jack Campbell and Broderick Martin will benefit from the way in which the coaches have taught them.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. You can find John. He's a publisher, All Lions, of course, the host of the Detroit Sports Podcast. You can get him on X or Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it, at Detroit Podcast. Look at John taking the time out of his busy day to join the fifth best show on the network. We appreciate you, John, a ton.
Absolutely. Guys, check out All Lions. I'm in that locker room every day talking it up. It's been great. With a 7-2 record, the players are so much more happy to talk to a guy like me. I'm going to drop a Malcolm Rodriguez feature coming up soon in a couple hours. Bruce Irvin feature. Check it out. I do think All Lions is one of the sites that you can read and feel like you're in the know, and I appreciate you guys having me. Every Thursday, I look forward to it. Best part of my week.
Yeah, we do as well. Thanks, John. Let me tell you about our friends quickly about Planet Fitness, because Planet Fitness is the home of the judgment-free zone where anybody